This week's ceramic activity is inspired by the Nazca double spout and bridge vessel from 40 BCE to 500 BCE. Located in the southern tip of Peru, the Nazca was a culture that flourished almost 2,000 years ago. However, during the Nazca civilization, writing did not exist. So the only glimpse that we have into the everyday life of the Nazca people is the art that they left behind. Through their inventive use of design, strong color choices, and the array of geometric patterns on their pottery, we are able to look into the window of their culture and beliefs. There are two types of design that the Nazca primarily focused on. Some Nazca pottery was naturalistic, depicting nature, animals, plants, and landscapes that give us a plethora of information about their environment, living conditions, food habits, and everyday life. The second type of Nazca pottery, such as the spouted vessel we are exploring today, depicts mythical and human-like creatures, giving us more information about religious beliefs and possible ceremonial activities. This double spout and bridge vessel could potentially show us the Nazca deity known as the Horrible Bird. The Horrible Bird is said to be a human-like raptor that is a combination of a condor and a hawk, representing one of the most powerful forces in the sky. As you work on your piece today, think about this. What do the colors in this piece tell us? Do the earth tones, like the deep reds, rich oranges, and light browns, give us clues to the Nazca's natural environment? What do the colors that you choose in your own art say about the environment that you live in? Let's take a look now at the repetitive design of this vessel and how different shapes fit together. How many ways can you use geometric shapes to create a dynamic design? All right, so the piece that we are going to be working on today is inspired by the Nazca double spout and bridge vessel as shown earlier in the video. What we will need is some air dry clay, water, a sponge, paintbrushes, some acrylic paint, washable marker, and a regular piece of printer paper. As you can see, this piece is actually a hollow spherical form, and you might be thinking, how are we going to make a hollow round sphere out of air dry clay? What we are going to do is we are going to be making two pinch pots that we will then conjoin together to create that form. To get started, you will need two pieces of air dry clay. Try to make them about the same weight, the same size. So to begin our pinch pot, what we are going to want to do is make this clay into a nice smooth spherical form. In order to do this, we are going to want to hold the clay with our hands in this shape, moving it, tapping it in a circle to encourage it into that sphere form. Now that I have my sphere, I'm going to look at my clay and see if there's any crevices or cracks, and if there are, that is going to be where I want to put my hole. So you're going to take your thumb and cupping the clay with, depending if you're left or right-handed, I am right-handed, so I'm cupping it with my left hand. I'm going to take my thumb, moving straight down, I'm going to push. All right. So I want to make sure that I left enough space at the bottom of my piece to have a nice solid foundation. So I want to push leave about a ½ an inch of clay there at the bottom. Obviously do not want to push all the way through your piece. All right, so now that I have my hole, I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to push down and out to create a nice foundation. I'm going to be moving my all the way around. Okay, now that I have a nice wide base, I am going to fulfill the name of the pinch pot and I'm going to start pinching. So how we are going to pinch our pieces, we are not going to do this because that will just manipulate your clay in a way that you do not want. Also, your fingernails could get caught in the clay, creating cuts and bumps that you don't want there. We are going to do this kind of a pinch, almost like a duck quacking, all right? I'm gonna do it nice and light, and we are going to move our piece in a circle while we pinch all the way around. And remember, we are going to be using equal pressure all the way through. Obviously, we're not machines, it's not going to be perfect, but we are going to try our best. What this is doing is this is actually giving your piece more vertical height. It might not look like it right now, but you can see the piece is growing as we pinch all the way around. So as you can see, we have a little bit of cracking here in our air dry clay. That's because we've manipulated the clay in a lot of different ways in a short period of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this little L shape here. I'm going to set my piece right in there. This is called collaring the pot, and I'm just going to go right on ahead and smooth these out. Don't be shy. Even dip your finger in a little bit of water. Smooth this out. Don't want it to crack on you. Okay, all the way around, nice and smooth. Okay, making sure that it keeps its shape. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing with my second ball of clay. That should be close, if not exactly the same amount that you had here. Okay, so we have both of our pinch pots ready to go. I am now going to start on attaching them together. So I'm gonna do a very, very light tap. Tip of one pinch pot. I'm going to do another light tap. This is just to make the surface a little bit more flat, so it's slightly more even when I am joining them together. So if I want to combine these two pieces, I can't just put it one on top of the other and say it's done. I need to make sure that they stick together. So how am I going to do that? Using a toothpick or another sharp object, maybe a pencil, maybe a pen. Use a toothpick. I'm going to scratch and attach. So I'm going to scratch all the way around my piece. All right, so we have scratched both of our pieces. It is time to attach. So using the water we have, I'm gonna take my finger, do a little dip, and I am going to go over those cracks with water. What this is going to do is the water is going to mix with the clay, creating a slip-like consistency, which is basically going to act as a glue for these two pieces. And the scratches will create a suction, almost a seal, so that they will be sucked and attached together. So I'm now going to take my two pieces here. Say this one is a wider base. I'm going to attach, just like that. Now that I've attached, I'm going to press lightly, push them together, sealing, making sure that I can see the slip all the way around. It's nice and even. All right, so now what I'm going to do is taking my finger, a little bit of water, I'm going to, doing this motion right here, like you were scratching your nose, move the clay from the top piece to the bottom piece down, creating a seal and getting rid of that line. So these two pieces are now sealed together, but they're not quite done. They're not quite ready to go. I'm going to take another piece of air dry clay. I'm going to roll it into a small ball about the shape of a lime, and I'm going to create a coil. Have my little ball here. I'm going to put it down, taking one hand. I'm going to start rolling it into a sausage shape, nice and easy. Okay. I'm then going to take my fingers and starting from the middle of my clay, I'm going to roll forward and backward while moving my fingers and pulling the clay to the side, just like that. What this is causing is an even distribution of clay all the way around my coil. We just want a string that will go all the way around to create a seam for our piece. So you want to make sure that it's long enough. That looks good to me. And then what are we going to do if we want to attach two things? Scratch and attach. So I'm going to take my toothpick here and I'm going to scratch all the way around where I want to seam. Now we are going to scratch and attach our seam. Take my fingers, wet them, create that slip-like consistency. Slip is pretty much just water and clay. I'm going to take my coil, I'm going to do the same thing, give it a little bit of water. You're going to take your seam and you're going to fit it all the way around where you created those lines. And you want to make sure that you make a big enough coil so that it fits all the way around. There we go. So what this coil is doing is it's not only adding support for your piece, but it's also hiding that line. So we are now going to take our fingers, get a little bit of water, and start pressing these together. If it does not disappear as you would want it to, you could use a credit card. You can take it and just smooth out the piece to make sure that you get all of those lines out. See that? Just erase anything you don't want in there. That is the beauty of clay. Okay, I like that. That's nice and smooth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate the shape. Don't worry, you won't break it. Just make sure that you're not pushing too hard. I'm going to take my hands on both sides and I'm going to push in, creating that spherical shape. Looking good. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get my sponge just a little bit wet, not too much. Squeeze most of that water out of there. I'm just gonna go around my piece and clean it up. Okay. It looks like the foundation of our piece is just about done. All right, everyone, now that our vessel has been created, the foundation of our piece, I'm going to start construction on our bridge handle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 equal size pieces of air dry clay, and I am going to roll them into sausage shapes, okay? So not quite like how I did the coil, going in the middle and moving out. I'm actually just gonna take these guys in my fingers because you want to leave them a little thick. If you look at the piece itself, you can see that both of the bridge handles are pretty thick in size, almost like a little thicker than a human thumb. So I'm gonna make about 2 of these, let's see, just like that. And I'm going to make another one. Keep in mind, you want them to be as close, they don't have to be perfect, but close to the same thickness, close to the same amount of clay. Okay, great. And as you can see in the piece, there is a small flat bridge attaching both of these together. So I'm going to take some air dry clay, all right? And keep in mind the size of your piece where you're going to be placing these handles. You don't want to make them huge so that your piece collapses. You want to make sure that they will fit nicely right on top of your piece, and that goes for the same for the bridge in the center. So all I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take this little ball of clay, and I'm going to flatten it out, okay? Just like that. I can actually take my washable marker here because it's such a small piece. And I can roll this out just like I would a normal piece of clay. This causes a nice thickness, so I know when I'm getting all the way around. That's good, don't want it too thin. It's good, about a centimeter there. I'm going to take my credit card and I am going to cut that. All right, so I have the 2 handles here. I have my bridge that I will be attaching. But first what I'm going to do is, as this is a hollow vessel, back in the Nazca times, though we can't be 100% sure what they used it for, we know that by putting water into the vessel, it actually creates a whistling noise, which means that the 2 handles are also going to be hollow. So I'm gonna take a paintbrush, and I'm going to press it right through the center, just like this, like you would a bead on a necklace, which makes it nice and hollow. And I'm going to do the same with the other piece. Skewer it right into the center there. Now that these 2 pieces are hollow, I'm going to go ahead, put them on their side, and I'm going to, let you all know, scratch and attach. So I'm going to take my toothpick, scratch, scratch, scratch. Okay, and just like we did with this piece, I'm gonna smooth this out. Make sure that it stays nice and firm. Just like that. You're also gonna wanna make sure that you flip your piece upside down, double check that the bottom is nice and smooth. Okay. So as I said before, the main piece of information that we know about this Nazca vessel is that when water was poured into it, you could actually hear a whistle as air from the inside of the container would blow out through the tops of these handles. So what I'm going to do before I attach these is I'm going to measure, make sure that it will fit nicely, and I'm going to take the bottom of my paintbrush and I'm going to push all the way down into the vessel, just like that, okay? Right through the hollow form. Don't want to poke all the way down into the bottom of the piece, just enough to get that resistance. Okay, looks good. I'm now going to do as we always do, and we're going to smooth out the base. I'm going to use the card once more to make sure that it is nice and even. You could use your finger, whatever you feel comfortable with. You could use your sponge to clean that up. It's up to you. Before we are completely finished, we're going to want to do one more. Make one more little coil. Wrap it around the side. You want this piece to be sturdy, okay? Do the same thing. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Okay, I have created my beautiful vessel. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this just a little bit wet. I'm gonna go ahead, wring out most of the water, just make it nice and smooth. And I'm going to go do one more pass for my piece. Make sure that I get out all those cracks, all those divots, all those dry spots that I do not want anymore. All right, you guys, so we are going to start in the creation of the design of our piece. So before we begin, I am going to teach you guys a little trick called the photo transfer. A lot of ceramicists do this. It ensures that our design that we have in our heads is able to be mapped out and carefully planned on a piece of paper. Then we can use that piece of paper to actually transfer the image onto our clay project. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first is we are going to want to measure our space. So obviously with one piece of big printer paper, we will be able to fit all around our ceramic piece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to trim this up a little bit. This method is sort of like a temporary tattoo. What we're going to do is draw out our designs onto the piece of paper first, and then using our washable marker, we are going to transfer that design right onto our piece. So before I start drawing, of course, I've already done my measurements. I know the size that I want my piece to be in order for it to be repeated all the way around my vessel. The first thing I'm going to look at is the elements of design, okay? So what is the first element of design? It's just going to be lines. So when I'm looking at the piece, I'm thinking about the lines that are created. Are they vertical or are they horizontal? So what do lines create? Lines create shapes. Shapes can either be organic or geometric, and it looks like in this piece, the design has a little bit of both. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with the first shape that I see, which is kind of a round rectangle that makes up the bird's shoulders. And then the second shape I see is just another small rectangle directly underneath. Another element of design that we are going to want to look at when recreating this piece is going to be size. So I've created my shoulders of my bird, and now I'm gonna look at the size and how all of the shapes fit together. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making the head of the bird, and I know based on good balance and size that the head needs to be smaller than the body. Another element of design is going to be movement. So you can see a lot of movement through the tail, which is going to just be a lot of small half circles growing in shape as they move down the body. So now that I have my basic shape down, I'm gonna go ahead and start recreating some of these smaller designs that I see on the piece. Using my washable marker, I'm just going to trace my piece. Make sure that the color of the washable marker that you choose is dark. Black is the best, but a dark blue will also do. Okay, so just making sure that my sponge is just a little bit damp. I'm going to go over the surface of my clay just so it's nice and shiny. Then I'm going to take my image. I'm going to place it onto the clay, like so. Then I'm going to take my sponge, go right over it. Voila! And the beauty of this is that you can do this all the way around your piece. We're now going to take some black acrylic paint. We are going to load our brushes with just a little bit, just enough. We don't want to overload them. Just enough to show up on our design. And we are going to start tracing our designs. Now that we've completely painted our piece and outlined our images, we are going to use color to create a little bit of variation. There we have it, everyone. We have our very own Nazca double spout and bridge vessel with 4 deities in repetition all the way around. Just a little bit of color variation to make things interesting. As with most air dry clay, this is going to take about 2 to 3 days to be completely dry and ready for use. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep on creating.